I'm Barbara Lee Diamondstein for Interior Design, The New Freedom. Today we'll be talking to Lella and Massimo Vignelli, internationally celebrated designers, and there is almost nothing that they haven't designed. Furniture, glassware, flatware, exhibition layouts, books, posters, jewelry, furniture, corporate trademarks, store, showroom, and interior design. The Vignellis are obviously total designers interested in shaping the whole environment. Is there anything that you exclude from your interest? Is there anything that you don't design?
If there is a mechanism, I stay away, like typewriter, or a radio, things like that, or a bicycle.
Is there anything that you haven't designed yet that you'd like to?
Well, there are many things for sure, and especially standing from the design for the home to fashion.
The role of fashion is transitory. The role of clothing is permanent. Now, generally speaking, in our design, we're more interested on permanence than transitory things, that like fads or fashions.
Are you saying that there is a philosophy that unifies all the diverse work that you do, if it is furniture or the possibility of clothing?
Well, the philosophy is based on 3 points: discipline, appropriateness, and ambiguity.
Discipline, appropriateness, and ambiguity.
Okay.
I can understand the first two qualities. They seem clear enough, but could you please expand on that last term? What do you mean when you say ambiguity?
It's a moment of tension. It's a moment neither there or there, neither here or there. And it's the situation like here I say, here denied. It's a beautiful state of mind, and it's a terrific one. It's the moment of excitement. It's the moment of creation. And ambiguity is something which is not reachable as well. It's undefinable. It's ambiguous.
It's in the making.
It's always there,
in the making.
It's terrific. I love it.
Is there
well, like
anything...
that thing, you see, all the pieces are standing up, and one is lying down. Why is lying down? Because by lying down, it has an ambiguous situation.
What do you call this table at?
Nobody has to read that thing. It's as important than I know it.
Well, we call it at the beginning metafora, but now that is metaphor, but metafora in Italian. Yes. But where it was first produced, but now that it's distributed in the United States, they say that they won't understand, so they call it Euclid. This was the distributor that is ICF idea.
Well, Euclid probably is a very good reference to any of your work, because there is a very strong geometry that appears to be underlying.
Absolutely, and this is again because geometry doesn't go out, is not a fad. Geometry is an eternal value, and we really always try to have, if you see our design, there is always a very strong geometry.
But
we don't go in sort of wavy, lines or contours, because we believe in that.
You've been partners in work and in marriage for a quarter of a century. Why don't you tell us how this team effort that you have now described has coalesced for us, how it works, and who does what?
Well, we both do everything. And we discuss everything, together, and then each one of us has more or less his own. It takes over, the follow-up. But we check continuously, and although Lella is more involved with three-dimensional things, I'm more involved with graphics. Nevertheless, I'm also involved with three-dimensional things, and Lella is involved with graphics in the sense that we discuss whatever project we are doing. And the attitude has always been, and has a very simple one: if Lella doesn't like it, it goes in the wastebasket.
The alliance between the possible Massimo and the practical Lella, and if she says no go, it's into the basket.
Well, sure, it's much faster to do a new thing than try to convince her.
It's very fast with the idea. Because it's fast, sometimes, they're half-baked, so they go in the basket. I feel that the most important thing, and it was perhaps not so clear or strong at the beginning, is that now we are really helping each other. We are not anymore out to show who is best, who has first the idea and so on. That sometime years ago, when we were more insecure, it was there. And now instead we are out to help each other. Or otherwise it goes just in a drawer, because that is a terrific idea, but it's not appropriate for this job.
How important is it to be aware of the past in terms of design?
The past is the best thing that ever happened.
In the past, that is.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're saying that a total awareness of the past and the use of historical reference, that's what I was going to ask
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Won't you take one of these
Well, you
objects
see, you know how
and
this
tell
came
us...
about? I'll tell you the story in 1 second. We had to do these glasses for this company in Venice, you know, the
Chiga Hotel chain.
And I was sitting there at the Great Hotel watching the La Salute, you know, the Church of La Salute, which has a dome, which is exactly like this, you know, with the ribs and like that. And the president of the company was saying how our glasses are going to be. Do you have any idea? And I said, just like that, you know, exactly like that. It relates to Venice in one side. It's a marvelous shape. And then the other thing, which is a lot of fun, by the way, with forms, is that a lot of forms, when you turn them upside down, they become something else.
Is there a Vignelli look? If I were to walk in someplace and I'd say, well, here is Lella and Massimo, see their fine hand again.
It would be the negation of all what we stand for. We don't want to have a look. I think when we have a look, it's because our design is too weak. We are not interested in personal style. We're not interested even in style per se, as it's been classified. We are interested in raising the standards of design acceptance.
Well, there is obviously a Vignelli attitude. We've been talking about...
That I like better.
Right.
That I like better.
How would you describe that attitude?
An attitude is a permanent thing. A style is a transitory thing. And I have no like for transitory things.
Well, up to this point, we've been talking about your background and your philosophy. Why don't we take a moment and talk about your office? How does it work? How many people work with you, and what do they do?
Oh, it works beautifully. It's terrific. It's 25 people and working like a lot of fun. And they're very good designers working. We talk with the designer, and Lella and I, we talk about the project, we call in the designer.
When you say the designer, there are graphic designers,
graphic and product
designers. Are there architects?
Yes. We sort of, sometimes crossover, you know, we sort of break the idea together, and, you know, with the designer that we feel will be more appropriate to follow up on that particular project. And then, generally, as Massimo was saying before, if it's graphic, is in his field, if it's three-dimensional, is mine field, but you always cross over, really. There is really, and also the designer. The great thing is that people that work with us really learn to cross boundary, and even if they are graphic, they start to be interested in sort of three-dimensional, get into signage, architectural signage, and so on. They learn to have that more broader point of view and field of activity.
I wonder if you keep an idea file, or do you design out of your own need, or you work only by commission or assignment?
Generally, is by commission and assignment. And when we do something by our own need, is because we need it for ourselves. You know, as pieces of furniture. Like, for example, the sofa that was designed in 1964, and the lacquer sofa, the Saratoga, and is still around, Standy carries it. That's because we really needed the sofa for our house.
But I've rarely been in your company, either the two of you, where something did not happen. You said, oh, that's a great idea. And someplace, somewhere, do you write it down, file it away, and then retrieve it?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Has there been a recent example of the use of something from that file that you've applied to a practical and manufactured basis?
These dishes here, this is exactly, we designed originally
Why don't we look at those dishes? That's a new Kyoto line of lacquerware that you've done. Do you call them, is this the clean pile of dirty dishes?
Yeah, that's the one.
Now tell us what that means, and tell us how it came out of your file and how you translated it
I'll tell you the whole
reality.
story, because it's an amusing story, because it goes like that. You know, when you start to a dinner, you have all the tables set up, the candles and the plates and the crystal and flatware, and the whole thing is nice, it's terrific. And it's beautiful, and you sit down, you start eating, you know, talking, eating and drinking, talking, eating and drinking, and gradually you're moving the whole table toward the garbage can, you know, and it becomes an awful mess, you know, until you finally, at the end, and since we have no butlers around, so you have to do that awful job of collecting the dishes and picking up, you know, the flatware along with the chicken bones left over and all these things.
Don't make it so disgusting.
No, I want to make it disgusting because it is a disgusting thing there. So what you do, you take your flatware, you put it inside there, and it stays there. Then you take another dish like this, everything is inside, and you put the one on top of the other. You don't have to get the flatware out. You don't have to put your finger on it, in other terms. You just make a whole pile of these dishes, then you take one of these dishes, you put it on top of it, and you have a clean pile of dirty dishes, which from that point of view is quite an achievement.
Everyone may not know that you are the designers of it, but there's hardly a household, regardless of economic range or geographical location, that doesn't have some of your plastic tableware that comes in every color, in every rainbow color, size, and shape. Tell us about the Heller plastic tableware. When did you first do that?
Well, that was done in 1964, and we were doing the corporate identity for a small company which was in the plastic business, and one of the partners had another small company which was making Mickey Mouse ashtrays.
When you say Mickey Mouse, that means not too good.
No, with Mickey Mouse.
Oh, really? With Mickey Mouse?
The license.
Yeah, just like that.
Like that Mickey Mouse.
Just like that, right there. And so I said, well, if you can make that, how about making a set of dinnerware, which would be stackable, very compact, and nice, and things like that. And maybe we can win a nice design award. And so I immediately had the idea that that could have been a good possibility, and just went back to the office, and half an hour later we had the whole drawing.
It was done very fast. And
Very
it
fast.
came out in production, like
2
in
months.
a month
We got the
and a
award,
half.
by the way.
Incredible. Got the
got it.
Golden Compass.
You also got a lot of imitations of that.
On everything. That's the only, sad thing in one side. I mean, financially it's a sad thing because they preempt your own market. On
Well,
the
what
other
about
side,
don't you
I
patent
said
your
before,
designs?
if
Now
you want to
we
raise
do,
the standard,
but
that's
at
the
that
first
point
thing you have to say.
we didn't know really enough, and we didn't patent it.
All of
So
the
the
things that we're
silverware.
looking at, the decanter, the 2 glasses, and the flatware, were those all done for commercial versus, residential purposes?
These were
And
done-
how do you make
yeah.
the distinction? Why couldn't
these
anyone
were-
use that at home?
Well, no, as a matter of fact, it's the same thing. These were designed originally for the Chic hotels because we designed the whole corporate identity. Then they asked to design china, glass, and silverware, which we keep doing. This, by the way, is usually the story, And then we say, by the way, your office needs a little, redoing here. And then they say, well, you have done my office, how about doing my apartment? And it's okay, don't do
No,
that.
the apartment we stopped.
No, but,
we don't do that.
It keeps
But
going
the
on.
letterhead and things like
Well,
that.
anyhow, this flatware was done for them, and so everything relates to this theme of, these lines. But now they're also available on the market for, not for
hotel use, but
not
for
hotel use,
private
but,
use.
for private use.
Are you admiring your work?
I love it.
Other than your own apartment, are there any
No.
interiors that you do?
Not for private.
Why not?
Because
Too much
again,
trouble.
it's too you get too personalized. It's too difficult. It's too time consuming.
Costs too much money.
Interior can be terribly time consuming. So we selected to do it just for companies or institution. And as a matter of fact, we like more institution like museums, and the church was one of our best jobs.
Did you ever do a house?
Yeah, I did a house when I was in school, and too much work, and decided that was not as much fun as graphics and design, which is quick. You can see right away if it comes out right or wrong.
Well, you like
a house you have to wait the whole time to get constructed, and then if it's wrong, you got to find another client to build another house, which is going to take another long time before you learn that.
How do you find your clients?
Oh, they come by themselves, thank God. That's no problem. that's easy.
I wonder if you would describe for us how you live. What does the interior of your own apartment look like?
Well, I will say that it's very spare. As a matter of fact, I had people coming in and saying, long time ago, but the lady came in and said, well, I understand you will like few more things around, won't you? And I was so taken back by her not understanding that I didn't even dare to say no. I said, oh, yes, yes, naturally.
Well, you are generally more straightforward. Why do you want it to look the way it does?
Well, first thing, because all the things that are around should be perfect. So, we just buy the few things that we can afford at the time, or our design and all these kind of things. And also,
And we don't have collectibles, too.
right, we are not collectors.
Because you can't collect junk is just taking too much room. To collect good things takes too much money, so we are caught in between. We can't do it.
What are the most dramatic changes that you've observed in the 20 years since your design office opened here?
Well, I think the improvement is sensational. 15 years ago when we came over here, everything was just ugly. Everything. It's unbelievable. There was not a good chair on the market beside the Nolan Miller chairs, you know, or antique chair, of course. But, and then it was like that for many times. The only good things were imported from Europe. Now,
well, I guess there was a time there that we were beginning to think that Italy was the design center of the world.
Right, fine.
Right.
But that doesn't any longer seem to be the case.
Now this is terrific. Now you have places like Conran, you have places like the Pottery Barn, you have places like Habitat. These places didn't exist 15 years ago. Now it's an explosion of good things at affordable prices, which really is the most important thing.
How does that
which
affect
tells you
your
that
work?
young people do not want to live with the same junk that the previous generation wanted to.
That's
That they want to
encouraging.
be of course, thank God we did something. You know, I think we all did something. Not only ourselves, but, you know, we have been preaching design. Really, that is the thing we have done for the last 25 years.
Well, here comes a heavy question, if I may. I mean, you're very philosophical, you're informed by the past. You talk about, you know, raising a standard. In the end, and I really do mean this question, can good design really improve society? Is it an act that has real social meaning, or is it more a question of designing pretty things, beautiful things, for people who can afford to pay for them, or even for those who have lots of
Great
taste
question.
and lesser
Terrific
fun?
question. I love it.
There are many sides to it.
Good, great question. I must tell you that 15 years ago, I really was very convinced that you can transform, or at least help to transform the society with good design. I know now that good design does not transform the society. The only thing which transforms society is our economical powers. Fine. We all agree about that. Nevertheless, design could make your microenvironment to look much better than what it looks now. And the architect takes care of the macroenvironment, the politician takes care of this country, which is the super macroenvironment.
Wait a minute,
And,
I'm just, which was the micro and which was the macro?
well, the politician take care of the nation, that's the super macro. The planners and the architect take care of the macroenvironment, the region and the city.
And when are we responsible for
And we take care of the
ourselves?
microenvironment.
What is inside your house?
You know, and we take care of the microenvironment. But I think that the microenvironment is the one which is all around us, all the time, until we go out on the street. But all around us, we're continually surrounded by furniture, object, desk, pens, everything, you know, things like that. And that is the microenvironment. That's, you know, generally speaking, the quality of that, the microenvironment was terrible before, and now it's getting much better, you know. Well, somebody gave me the other day, look, this is a Tiffany coming out. This is an Elsa Peretti design. Beautiful, simple, great gesture with that clip. It's not the kind of design that I would design, but it's an object which I enjoyed. It's fine. Now, these things were not available 15 years ago.
How do you compare the state of Italian design and American design nowadays?
In a sense, here is the future of design, because more and more companies are beginning to call on designers that years ago they were not doing. And you know, the situation naturally is much bigger, and it will take a longer time for complete the circle, as in a sense it did in Italy.
Looking back, do you think your career would have been any different if you had remained in Italy rather than coming here? And I'm specifically asking you that not only as someone who came from Italy, but as a woman as well.
Well, in a sense, my career would have been faster in Italy, because for a professional woman there was immediate recognition. There was no difference between a woman or a man, not even the fact of considering the problem. Instead here there was.
Was it because there were so many fewer professional women
professional
in Italy?
women and more, yes, exactly, in Italy. And so if you became professional, there was just no question. Here instead, there was only question you were a woman. And there was really a different way of treating you that went on for quite a long time.
And now, 20 years later?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I mean, perhaps I conquer also that position personally of not being, you know, intimidated by certain situations or by certain attitudes. So in a sense, I will say that there it would have been faster, recognized faster also and gone to the point. But certainly it would have been on a smaller scale. And the great thing about working here is really the sense of scale and the sense of power that you get. And also the sense of security, because in Italy they go very fast, but then again, you know, there is the country of prototypes. So you have a lot of prototypes, you have your name all over the place, but then very few things. Here it takes a longer time, but you are building more on a solid ground, I would think.
You know, the syndrome of the big number, the only thing which you can easily produce in great quantities is junk. It's amazing.
Is that necessarily the
No,
case?
it's not
You
really
mentioned
true. It's not
earlier.
really
But the
true.
point is this, that here the industry is addressing to a nation which is 200 million people. So unless they get the whole market, they are not interested in doing. Now, which is the wrong thing, because even a segment of 10% of that, you know, population,
Market,
10% of that market is bigger than any European market put together. So, you see, it's a matter of attitude.
So what do you see as the future direction and emphasis of your work?
More designing furniture and product. Really sort of definitely, because also as I see the moment that in this country the manufacturers are becoming more aware of the design and more aware of the need of the designer. So I hope, you know, that will be a natural direction in a sense.
One of your assignments was to design the furnishing for the St. Peter's Church. I guess it's the only condominium church in the country, and it's that sort of giant paperweight tucked into the City Court building in New York City. How did that assignment come about, and would you tell us what materials you used and what you intended to create and what you did create for the interior of that church?
They call and they say, we'd like you to design the interior of St. Peter. And of course I say, well, it was about time. I was thinking you were going to rob me. And then I find out what it was, so we got from there.
What did you do?
But you know, one of the things is also that we immediately started with this interior committee and the pastor, which was a really Pastor Peter, an incredible person.
Terrific.
And we many times
I have to
say,
tell you one thing right away, because otherwise I forget. You see, there are plenty of good designers in the world, but there are very few good clients.
Right,
very
exactly.
few. And that was one of the few. You see, Pastor Peterson.
What is an ideal client?
A client which has understanding, to begin with, a client which has no fear.
and a client in that case that he doesn't ask you, have you designed churches before?
Yeah, exactly. You never ask
He didn't
that.
ask
You
that
never ask,
question, you know.
What did you do for
Well,
the church?
you know, we first thing the theme was very interesting because it was not just a church, but you know, really a meeting hall and a concert hall, and so
And
it had
the
to
jazz
accomplish
ministry,
right,
too,
the jazz
of
ministry.
this,
So it had to accomplish all this. Matter of fact, when we were trying, you know, talking with them and trying to define what the space should be, since it was not a religious space, really, finally we came up with the definition that it should be a moral space, which was a perfect definition of what that space should be.
What is a moral space?
Well, in that particular case, because of the flexibility of use, we didn't want to smell of incense all the time, because it would have been kind of out of place for a concert or for a ballet or for a theater. And we didn't want it to look too much like a theater, because it would have been kind of out of place for a funeral or for a wedding or whatever it is, or for a service. So it had to be a very ambiguous, very flexible kind of place. The only thing which could have been common is a certain moral quality about the space and the materials and the honesty
And the integrity,
you know, and the integrity of the
What
things.
did you do for the
Now
church?
Lella one time explained what we intended for moral space. It says just the opposite of a catering palace. Just,
Well, what did you do for that interior? What are the materials that you
Well,
used?
the materials naturally
about-
are sort of noble and long-lasting, like granite and solid oak and a very thick, strong, natural linen, and the wool that they use, you know, for the petit point. And So, you know, the materials really, we choose also to use solid oak and not veneer, because we really wanted to have the thing long-lasting and heavy as the pews of the, you know, traditional churches. We choose also to go to the pews because we didn't want to have the forest of legs of the chairs. And we wanted also
so
to
the pew
define
goes to the
floor, right? To
way
define architecturally, you know, the space occupied by the sitting units, as in
Like
the
New England
colonial
churches, yeah.
New England churches, you know, that they have those sort of boxes. And then also on all the steps that are around the church, that are architectural steps, really part of the architecture, when they are closed, they open up and they become a seat, because again, we didn't want to have to see that sea of empty seats when there is few people in the church.
Very depressing.
And then
empty
the
church.
other thing that is particular to that is that there is a lot of modular platform and steps to form the elevation of the altar that can be moved all around in a different position from the center to one side to the other side, to change completely from a central church to a long nave church. And so
no
everything has a sort of a very permanent and look, but instead is designed, so it is modular and mobile.
In this moral space, why are there no crosses?
Well, there are no crosses again because the flexibility of use. You don't want to be obsessed all the time by a cross there, but on the contrary, this becomes a very interesting
Part of
the ceremony. For instance, when the whole procession of, you know...
at the beginning of the service coming,
you know, the clergy comes out before the service. They come and they plant the cross on the platform of the altar, bam, like that, you know. And in that moment, that space becomes a church, and only in that moment. Just like a forest becomes a forest in Elizabethan theater when you go with just the one plant.
If I may
it's that power of image, that is beautiful.
I was noticing the beautiful necklace that you're wearing, Lella. Is that something that either of the two of you designed?
Yes, it's one of my design because I really wanted the necklace.
And speaking of designs, I noticed recently, Massimo, you have redesigned yourself.
Oh yeah, I became 50, I had to.
But I mean, you wore a whole other kind of attire,
Yeah, well,
a different kind of suit that had no lapels and
right,
so on.
right,
What
right.
made you change your mind?
Age. Age and the fear of becoming ridiculous and stabilized, you know, and trapped in one own cliche.
Well,
Yes,
that is something that no one would ever suspect will happen to you. Thank you, Lella and Massimo Vignelli, for being with us today. I'm Barbara Lee Diamondstein for Interior Design, The New Freedom.